today we will start discussing an important aspect in the embryonic development, which is the development of the cardiovascular system. An important system, an important organ that the baby will be needed during the development. As you know all, by the end of the second week, cells from the epiblast will start migrating into the area between the epiblast and the hypoblast, which is called now the third layer, or it's called mesodermal layers. So by the third week, by the process of gastrulation, 3 layers of cells are there. And the cardiovascular system appears in the middle of the third week. By about 16 to 18 days, the heart will start developing, when the embryo is no longer able to satisfy its nutritional requirement by diffusion. Progenital cells that is initially come from the epiblast, immediately adjacent to the cranial end of the primitive streak. Here is the primitive streak, and near the dorsal end or the ventral end of the primitive streak, progenital cells, we call them progenital, that is they are initiating the cardiac cells formations. So these cells, they migrate through the streak into the splanchnic area in the lateral plate. With the growing of the embryo, as we said, there are 3 layers, the mesodermal layers. By the end of the third week, it will be differentiated into 2 layers, the splanchnic and the somatic mesoderm. We will come to that later on with the development of the muscular system. Cells from which we call them now progenital cells, they start migrating from the epiblast. They go along the dorsal mesoderm. They collected there, and there by the half of the third week of the intrauterine life, they start migrating to the ventral part of the baby, cranial to the neural fold. From there, they will form a crescent or the horseshoe-like structures, which we call it the primary heart. These cells, the primary heart field cells, which are collectively are here. This is the oropharyngeal membrane. These primary or progenital heart cells will be started collectively here, will form the primary heart field. Okay? These cells or the primary heart cells will form in the future. This diagram shows how the primary heart cells or progenital heart cells are migrating through the dorsal mesentery and to form initially the cardiogenic area, which is located in the front of the pericardial cavity in the front of the oropharyngeal membrane. They will form in the future. This is the line of migration along the dorsal mesentery from each side, right and left side of the baby. They will migrate to the front side. They will form here the cardiogenic area or the primary heart tube, okay, from each side by about 16 to 18 days, nearly 20 days, okay. So these cells will form the primary heart tube. It will form, this primary heart tube will form most of the atria, the left ventricle, and the part of the right ventricle also. The remainder of the heart will be formed from another structures, which is called the secondary heart field. Secondary heart. So the nidus or the nucleus of the heart is formed from the progenital cells, which will be formed in the future the primary heart field. The secondary heart tube cells also collectively from surrounding mesodermal layers of cells will form tube-like structures, which is called the secondary heart tube. This secondary heart tube will be restricted with the future development into 3 areas, that is called the truncus arteriosus, bulbus cordis, and the sinus venosus. from each side, as I said, for the formation of primary heart tube, cells from each side will form, migrating together. They will form as they are migrating, they will form the tube-like structures, which is called the heart tubes, along with the development of the heart. And then this area will be restricted into three areas: the truncus arteriosus, the bulbus cordis, and the primitive or the sinus venosus. Initially, the central portion of the cardiogenic area lies anteriorly to the oropharyngeal membrane and the neural plate. With the closure of the neural tube and the formation of the brain vesicles, with the expansion, and as the baby is folding anteriorly and posteriorly and lateral folding of the baby, so the heart and the pericardial cavity, then to start with, they are located in the cervical region. But as the baby growing and elongated, and it is folding anteriorly and posteriorly, the cardiac cells will be migrating caudally, and finally they will be spinal position in the thorax. And as the embryo bends cephalocaudally and laterally, the heart resuming the natural place. At the same time, the cells from the endothelial lining and the outer myocardial layer start growing and thicken, forming a cavity-like structures. That is the heart tube. The heart tube will bulge more and more into the pericardial cavity, and it will be start suspended in the mesoderm by a dorsal mesenteric fold. This diagram shows the embryo at 22-23 days of age, which shows the frontal view of the heart tube undergoing looping in the pericardial cavity. The primitive ventricles, which is this blue one, is moving ventrally and to the right, whereas the antral region is moving dorsally and to the left. This slide exactly shows what's occurring on in the sequences of heart development. By the 4th week of development, as we said, there's a crescent-shaped tube on each side of the oropharyngeal membrane, the ventral part of the baby, that is the precardial cells and the primitive streak. And then at the 5th week, the heart tube is fused, forming a single structures, which will then elongated anteriorly and posteriorly, and there will be formation of heart chambers, and looping of the heart will occur during that part. And also with the growing and development of the heart, a further deep interventricular septum will be formed. To start with, the septum between the atria and the ventricle will be developed, and all going through, there will be a formation of the interatrial septum and interventricular septum. That is toward the end of the 7th week. This is the cross section of the developing heart by the development of the 5th week, as we said. That is with the looping of the heart. This is to start with the anterior ventricle, which will be formed the left ventricle by the S looping of the heart, and gradually with the let's talk about this slide, which show the atrial and ventricular septal development. By the 6th week development, as we said, there will be an interventricular septum will develop. This is the heart chamber forming the two atria, two ventricles. The atrioventricular septum will be formed, and with the development of the interventricular septum, there will be an interatrial septal will be formed from the upper part of the atria and the interventricular septum. A growing septum will be formed called septum primum. To start with a lower part, elongation start upward and then from upper part start downward. They fuse together, forming an area left in between open, which is called septum or foramen secundum. As the foramen secundum is there, another group of clusters of cells will be developing there, forming a septum secundum, which will come nearby to the septum primum or the interventricular septal part of the septum primum, leaving a small opening there called foramen ovale. During intrauterine life, the right side of the heart carries blood with high. At last, I want to say that development of the arterial and venous system is not included in your lectures, and you need to know the fate of all arches. How many arches are there? What is the origin, and how many of them are disappearing? Otherwise, all the arterial and venous system are not required from you. If you have any question, you can send a comment, and thank you.